Welcome back to another episode of Pokemon Knowledge. So, if you watch my most recent live, pretty funny thing happened. So, the title of that video was I Was Wrong. And in that video, I told you, I was like, honestly, I thought that Brilliant Stars and Lost Origins would be out of stock by that point, and I was wrong. So, technically, I was wrong. And then within the matter of, I don't know, people could fact check me out there. 15 minutes after that video concluded, Pokemon Center was out of stock on Lost Origin booster boxes. It was like I told everyone why I was wrong. I ended my video 15 minutes later, out of stock. Did I have an impact on that? No, I do not have delusions of grandeur, but the coincidence and the timing for that was perfect. Absolutely perfect. And people were expecting me that like the very next day to make a new video that's like I was right, but I didn't want to do that. So I figured with this title, I just, you know, what's that saying? It's like sometimes you can just will something to happen. And man, I really want Brilliant Stars to go out of stock on PokemonCenter.com. So hopefully with the title of this video, I will that into existence. And I'm sure I will be happy. I'm sure many of you at home watching this video will be happy if that's the case. Now, a lot of this stuff is anecdotal, but we had people in the last live saying how they weren't getting sealed cases anymore and how they're just coming as individual boxes. And that might be an indication that Pokemon is running really low. Maybe. Anecdotal, don't know. I'm hoping that's the case. But yeah, just figure, title this video. Figure if I make a video, Brilliant Stars will go out of stock on Pokemon Center. But there's something also happening at the exact same time, which I don't know if it's coincidence or if it's just maybe market manipulation or if it's just people realizing they might be getting their last chance. But if you've been looking on PokemonCenter.com, a lot of the hits, so, the Karen's Umbreon VMAX, the Karen's Umbreon just regular V, the Mimikyu, watching TV, one of my absolute favorite modern artworks. If you guys watch, I did a top 10 video where I just went through my top 10 favorite, modern items, and that was one of them. That was actually pretty high on my list. I want to say it was like 3 or 4. Absolutely beautiful artwork, one of my absolute favorite cards in this hobby. But if you're looking at the prices of a lot of this stuff, we're seeing huge, upticks, especially with the Umbreons, both in the VMAX and the V. Is it a sign? It's almost you get a little you almost get nervous because all the signs are there, it's just singles are starting to run, which is something that you want to happen. And this is this weird thing that gets put out there by certain groups of people where people are like, "Oh, everybody hates modern." It's like, "No, no, 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 no." People are dumb. People who say that are dumb. They're just dumb people who say everybody hates modern. No, no. What the facts of the matter is people, anybody who's really engaged in the market, cards usually do one thing right at release. They go sky high and then they usually settle and then they'll crash back down and then you'll usually see a period of stagnation till eventually, given enough time on a card, the supply gets eaten up. As long as demand's there, then that card eventually starts to rise. So when people hear people being negative on some of these cards, it's like, no, 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 no. It's just, I think either one, there will be a period of stagnation on that card, or number two, that card is actually on a downhill trajectory and I don't want to pick it up yet. I'm going to wait for that card to start to recover. And maybe that's what's happened on Brilliant Stars, These cards have been out for a long time. People have started to have their opportunity, and now maybe people are actually moving in because they're starting to potentially see the supply of Brilliant Stars dry up, at least for the raw cards. Right now, yeah, Brilliant Stars is still readily available on PokemonCenter.com. You can pick up booster boxes. Packs are relatively cheap, but, people are starting to slowly move from Sword and Shield. Meaning, and when I say moving from Sword and Shield, what I'm talking about is we are in the niches. So when you could easily source Brilliant Stars, I think you don't understand that the average person is walking into their Walmarts or Targets. And if you're walking into your Walmarts or Targets or your Best Buys or your GameStops or Party City or Walgreens or CVS or whatever other 100 million stores sell Pokemon, more likely than not, there's probably not Sword and Shield pack sitting on the shelf. It's probably like one of the more recent Scarlet and Violet sets. So because that's happening, just Sword and Shield is slowly starting to dry up on store shelves. Now, this is not a blanket statement across the board, meaning you're not going to be able to find any instances where you're going to be able to walk into your local grocery store and pick up sleeve Brilliant Stars booster packs on a one off. And that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying for the large majority of this hobby, Sword and Shield packs are becoming scarcer in relative to everything else that is currently out. So when that happens, it just means people start opening less. And as people start opening less, prices might start to tick up. And I think a lot of people are looking at these prices of a lot of these alt arts for Brilliant Stars, especially the Karen's Umbreon V Max and then the Umbreon V, and maybe they're thinking market manipulation. And I just think that this is normal. This is just those cards have eventually just been stagnant for so long. Now might be the time. If you don't have those cards, now might be the time to just pick them up. Which there's a lot of those cards that exist, don't get me wrong, but with that said, like the hobby might just eventually be moving away from all these sets. And then as people move away, prices start to tick up. So let's hope, because people are starting to see single prices increase, that will make people start to really look at Brilliant Stars. And when you look at the chase of the set, which is the Charizard V alt, beautiful artworks. You got, Charizard flying in the sky. You got a really pissed off Venusaur in the distance. That card is a mean card. I love mean cards in this hobby. If you're not new to this channel, you've heard me use those words before. I like cards that are mean, that are really like, tell a story, but they're not. It's a mean card. It's a fight scene between two of the biggest fan favorite Pokemon that really exists, talking about Gen 1 starter Pokemon. Charizard versus Venusaur. It doesn't get much better than that. Maybe you can make the argument that you would like Charizard versus Blastoise, because then Blastoise would have the upper hand, but it's a beautiful card, and I can't wait till we eventually get, the alternate perspective of that card, where I hope we do eventually get a Venusaur alt art, and the Venusaur's alt arts like perspective is of that Charizard in the distance. I do hope we get that. I mean, we saw it happen with like the Charizard versus Mew. We saw it, which came in the Charizard UPCs. It was the Charizard card fight in the, or excuse me, not Mew. The Charizard fight in the Mewtwo, and then in Crown Zenith we had the Mewtwo like perspective of that card fight in the Charizard. And I love when Pokemon does that. And they are missing. They did miss it a little bit by not having that Venusaur card, and I really do hope that Venusaur card eventually does get, just made. But yeah, and then I think that Charizard's potentially undervalued. And the reason why I say I think it's potentially undervalued is because I'm looking at some of the big hits of the Sword and Shield block. So there's a very clear winner, right? It's a Moonbreon. And I'm going to be honest with you at this point, I don't know if anything catches the Moonbreon. I feel like the Moonbreon is just going to do Moonbreon things, and it's going to keep just kind of doing its own thing. But then you got the Garantina from Lost Origin, and then, that's obviously a big heavy hitter card. But I think that people are kind of sleeping on that Charizard a little bit. And maybe now that we're starting to see people kind of, enter into this, the hype starting to go there, single prices start to intake or increase, then we're just going to start to see the sealed product fall right behind it. And if that does happen, I get my wish, right? I get my wish. Like the Brilliant Stars finally goes up. I've only had to sit here behind a camera for the last, when did Brilliant Stars even come out? It came out in 2021. Here we are in 2024. So for the last 2+ years, I've been just singing the praises of Brilliant Stars. Maybe eventually I will be right. I just have to go on video every single day from now until that thing eventually goes out of stock, until eventually I will be right. But I just have to do whatever I can and just will it into existence. But so yeah, everybody just go out, buy your Brilliant Stars. Make my prophecy, which is not a prophecy at this point. It's just throwing shit at the wall and hoping something sticks. So, but yeah. So I want to ask you guys a random question too, and I want you guys to give me your honest answer. So I was just sitting around the other day, and It's not good when I sit around because if I'm sitting around, I'm usually thinking. Usually I got to stay pretty active to keep my brain from thinking because if I start thinking, like I told you, it's dangerous. But I was thinking about when I was at Nick Old School Pokemon's house very recently, within the last weekend or two. And while I was there, so excuse me, Nick was downstairs opening up packs on eBay Live. And while he was doing that, me, Dan, and Jake from Pokenomics were upstairs in Nick's kitchen, and we were just ripping random, like, dead TCGs. And this was the dead TCG that we ripped. $10 booster box, like, super cheap. But me, Dan, and Jake, we all had a ton of fun opening it. It was like just interesting artworks. Like, it was actually enjoyable opening the packs, for it's like a $10 experience. But I got myself thinking, and the problem is my brain started ticking. I was like, never done a box break on this channel. I've never done anything like that, but I would want to do like something fun. I don't want to just make it boring and do like Pokemon because I feel like everybody's doing Pokemon. And then my brain started to the wheels were spinning, and I'm like, I want to do a dead TCG. But if I do a dead TCG, I have to make it a dead TCG that is kind of worth it. And then I'm like, I want it to also be a meme. I gotta ask you your opinion. If I did a box break of Kickstarter MetaZoo just for the memes, would it be worth it? And then we would definitely have to bring Mr. Basic Trainer on. Basic Trainer would come on. We'd have to bring him on as the expert. But I want to get your guys' thoughts. If I did a MetaZoo box break, I would do affordable packs just for the meme of the channel, assuming that I have never done a box break ever. Because I figure there's no TCG deader than MetaZoo right now, and it's the only one that's like actually kind of still has value, Kickstarter. But then I went down a deep, sad rabbit hole also. I also went and looked to see even if I did open up a MetaZoo Kickstarter booster box, like what would the hits be worth? Like the Mothman, and it wasn't pretty. So I would have to sell it as a guaranteed lose money. And that's why I would do MetaZoo, just because I want to open up a dead TCG, and I feel like it would make I would try to do the most clickbaity title possible. Well, let me know. I wanted to just run that past you. But otherwise, I don't know if I'll ever really do a box break or anything on this channel. I could do like a $10 $10 dead TCG, but I don't think anybody would even want to watch that. I feel like it's got to be something that's at least a little engaging. I don't know how many Kickstarter MetaZoo booster boxes exist, and the irony of it is if I did open up a MetaZoo Kickstarter box, the only other time I've opened 2 MetaZoo packs in my entire life. One of them I opened up at Denver Collecticon. Basic Trainer came over to Nick Old School Pokemon's table. I was standing behind it. It was Basic Trainer and Ivy came in Basics like, I gotta get you to open up a pack. And I recorded it on my phone, and I have the only recording of me ever opening a MetaZoo pack. And then the second MetaZoo pack I ever opened was for a short I made on my channel, where I put that MetaZoo pack through a paper shredder. So I just real quick looked out on the chat, and Basic Trainer said, PK, MetaZoo is not dead yet. Yes, of course it's not dead. But I just wanted to do a quick live tonight. I'm going to go hop up to the chat. If you guys have any questions, put your questions in now. And I'm going to make my way to the bottom of the chat, as always. Damn, appreciate the comments. He said, today's the prophecy has happened. Cases of booster boxes, and they're all growing. Thanks for all the rants. That reinforces conviction that Pokemon is here to say, yeah. I mean, I just feel like I've talked about this on many lives. I think we're just too ingrained in this hobby and too entrenched. It's almost impossible for a lot of people to leave at this point, but it just makes me wonder. And I'm not going to go into the whole rant again, but it's the question I always have of, I think Pokemon has moved out of its infancy as a collectible hobby, and I think Pokemon has really moved into like its teenage angst years. And with that said, there's still a lot of growing from your teenage years to your adult years to call it old age. And I think we can look at sports a little bit and like start to look at the comparisons, It does get dangerous. I mean, it's tough, right? I've made this on multiple videos, I don't like to really compare Pokemon to anything. Some people compare Pokemon to the stock market and S&P, but some people compare it to Beanie Babies, and then the irony is the people that compare it to the S&P 500 won't compare it to like another collectible thing. They rather compare it to the stock market, which is even close to a collectible, but whatever. Let people do what dumb people do, but you know, when I think about just Pokemon, if I had to like if people put a gun to my head and was like, PK, you have to compare Pokemon to one thing, what would you compare it to? And I'd say probably sports would be like my number one. If I didn't have a choice and I had to compare Pokemon one to one with one thing that exists, it would have to be sports. The only reason I say that is because, every time I'm at sports shows, I see, a very similar type of community that Pokemon has, but it's just an older demographic usually. Not all the time, but most of the time it's an older demographic. And it makes me start to think like, okay, looking at sports is out of like the infancy, which infancy for sports, you can make the argument. I mean, obviously there's some really old sports cards. We're talking, the T206s, Honus Wagner's, or Shoeless Joe Jackson Jack in the Box cards. Yeah, there's that infancy, I guess, but that's not really what I talk about. When I think about, maybe the infancy of sports cards, I'm thinking about like the kids that eventually grew up. So like in the 50s, the kids collecting, Mickey Mantles and Willie Mazes and Jackie Robinson and all those type of cards, until eventually into the 60s and then the 70s, but then eventually got to the 80s. And for sports, if you're going to say if there's anything that could be the teenage angst years of sports, it's got to be, right, the junk wax era. And anybody who's maybe a little bit younger and doesn't understand how much like 1980s, 1988, 1989, 1990, like Topps, Donruss, Leaf, Upper Deck, all these cards, I mean, they were just printed to at a wild amount. But even and if there's anything reassuring about sports, is even out of those period of times of like absolute get print to oblivion, like the top cards of the set in high condition, so PSA 10 plus, still do sell for a premium, whether you're looking at a 1992 Derek Jeter rookie or 1989 Ken Griffey Jr. While those cards are super, super abundant, especially like the Ken Griffey Jr. Upper Deck card, readily available. But as long as you have that card in a PSA 10, for what it is, for how many exist, it still holds that premium. So you really do see that condition rarity in sports, especially when it comes to this really, really junk stuff. And I just always think, like, are there any kind of comparables you can make until eventually, moving out of the 80s, and then kind of that hype dies down a little bit, and a lot of the prices for a lot of that junk wax era of baseball really start to crash until eventually, starting in like around the 2000s. I mean, baseball always had serialized cards, but it wasn't like their main focus. They were really like one-offs for type of sets until eventually into the 2000s, baseball really started to like, I guess, come into its own and start to really make those serialized cards, but then started to do like the on-card autos and the patch autos until eventually, that was like a very good period of crazy hype in the 80s and 90s till eventually like a more slowdown in the early 2000s till eventually like the hobby really started to pick up until what we saw happen in sports cards in the like say the last 5 to 10 years has been wild. And then I always wonder, could Pokemon be doing like a similar trajectory? And it's hard to say, and the reason why it's hard to say is because for all those periods of, like the sports, for like the junk wax era, if Pokemon was arguably in a period of overprinting, like the thing about like the sports card overprinting is when that was happening, like people didn't really realize it. And then you can make the argument of, is Pokemon in that period of overprinting? And if we are people not really realizing it? And then if you make the argument, no, it's different because there's a lot of different companies, and Pokemon is definitely not in a period of overprinting, which I'm kind of leaning towards that's not really the case, that Pokemon is not overprinting anything. And the reason why I say that is because you just look at what's available at distribution. It seems like, with the exception of the super, super most recent modern stuff, like nothing's really available at distribution. So I'm leaning towards we are not even close to the period of, like, the junk wax period of Pokemon. But then I like to do at least the hypothetical. Well, what would it take if that's the case? We've already seen Pokemon release numbers like 9 billion cards a year. Listen, I'm not going to do the same rant that everybody else has done on 100 different channels. What could 9 billion cards look like? They're definitely not 9 billion, Umbreon VMAXs. So are they 9 billion? Are they counting code cards? Are they counting energy cards? Are they counting, just everything in between, Like, what does Pokemon count towards that 9 billion? Because if it's energy cards, think every single ETB of every single Walmart and Target and Best Buy. Every single one of those ETBs comes with 1 brick of energy. So, I mean, those would skew the numbers, and I'm sure they count those. But then it's not just 9 billion. We think English cards, but it's not just 9 billion English. You got the Japanese market. You got the emerging Chinese market. You got the Korean market. And all the other languages, then you got all the stuff that's going over to the UK. There's a lot, So if 9 billion cards isn't overproduction, which I'm telling you, I don't believe it is, which is a crazy thing to say, that I don't think 9 billion is overproduction, because the market is just being able to absorb it. So what would the number be? Is it 20 billion? Is it 30 billion? Is it 100 billion? Like, where do you eventually get to what number would it take to get to 1989, 1980 Donruss tops overproduction in sports? And it's an interesting, conversation. I don't really know what that number is, and I don't even know if there's obviously a number. There's always a number, but I just don't know what that number is, and I struggle to know how does Pokemon be able to get to that number. Johnny Bongo. Well, I see Mr. Basic Trainer here, so if you guys want to see Basic Trainer hop on for a guest appearance, open up some Kickstarter MetaZoo, let me know. Uh, Basic said he's here before the Pokemon crash. Yes, Basic. Johnny Bongo said, what set will go down Sword and Shield second best? Lost Origin or Brilliant Stars? Listen, I already told you. I'm going with Brilliant Stars. I'm probably going to be wrong. It's probably going to be Lost Origins, but I think Brilliant Stars will go down as number 2. Unfortunately, I also put out the speculation that whatever set went out of stock first on PokemonCenter.com, whether it was Brilliant Stars or Lost Origin, I also believe that whichever set went out of stock first would be the set that would be the number 2 of Sword and Shield. But it's interesting. We'll see. It's just sets going out of stock on Pokemon Center is just doing what sets do when they go out of stock on Pokemon Center. It's just the same thing over and over and over again. McNick, good to see you. Pokey Snipes. Haven't seen Pokey Snipes in the chat lately. How you been, buddy? Pokey Steve said, sup PK, I'm about to go all in on a case tonight. Let's make it happen, yes. If you buy a case, I can't buy any more cases, but I could maybe buy a booster box. We'll see what happens after this live. Unless I'm going to buy a Kickstarter MetaZoo box, then we can't make it happen. I think we should. I think we should do it for the memes. Because if anybody's going to open up Kickstarter MetaZoo, it's got to be like the biggest hater of MetaZoo, right? So, D-Gen Collector. First of all, amazing name, D-Gen Collector. But for a D-Gen Collector, great comment. He said, soon as my eBay payout hits in the AM, I'm going to snag another case of Brilliant Stars. You know what, D-Gen Collector? I'm going to give you credit. You live up to your name as a D-Gen Collector. So Nicholas said, still happening. People are getting cases open. One of his buddy in a Discord said he got it open for Lost Origin, and some booster boxes actually had slight tears. Interesting. So Mike Jacobs, this is a good question. He says, how has the Noivern alt-art stayed so low? It'll go up crazy, mark my words. Maybe. The Noivern is a freaking awesome card. I call it the Batman card. But, yeah, it's interesting how some of these alt-arts are so cheap. I mean, I don't really have any in front of me right now, but I was I wouldn't say I was really speculating on. I don't think I have any in front of me, but I was not really speculating, but I was picking up some really really cheap like the Sandaconda V. I was picking up those super cheap. The Skunk Tank. Shout out to it's Brilliant Stars. I think it's Skunk Tank. Is it? I don't remember. What was the Skunk Tank? Silver Tempest. I don't know. I was picking up the Skunk Tank. I was picking up some of these Altarts. I wasn't like doing it hardcore, but I was definitely like had them on my radar, and I was just scooping up here and there. And then I tried to grade a bunch of my Sandaconda V's and just got destroyed with nines. Got destroyed so hard that I was just like, yeah, I'm not even gonna list this car. I'm just gonna tuck it away in the, you know, in the dark corners of the basement, and then just wait. I guess I'll have to wait on those cards. But yeah, I was picking up some because they were just criminally undervalued, and even the Skunk Tanks were just criminally undervalued. I think. Yeah, I don't want to go pull it out, but I'm pretty sure I have some Skunk Tank 10s too that I graded. But that's the thing, when you think about alt arts, when you think about pull rates, these pull rates are just as tough for these cards. Obviously it's like the big exception is the fan favorite Pokemon are going to sell. I get that. I understand. Listen, I'm not going to sit here and say I do not understand that a Moonbreon with an Umbreon, one of the biggest fan favorite Pokemon, or a Charizard, or a Mewtwo, or a Mew, or a Venusaur, or a Blastoise, or any other big fan favorite Altar is obviously always going to sell for a premium. But what I am saying is that when you look at the price disparities between a $2 Altart versus a $600 Altart, that is a huge, huge price disparity when you're talking the differences from $600 to $2. That's a $598 difference between the two Altarts, which have the same sort of pull rates. I do find that to be a little crazy, I guess you can say. But now that's where people are going to take my words out of context, and people are going to think I think a Sandaconda V should be the same price as a Moonbrown. And no, that's not what I'm just saying. I'm just saying the price disparities are crazy. And when you talk about that Noivern, it's yeah, there's a huge price disparity. And Noivern is Evolving Skies, so especially when you think about just what is Evolving Skies selling for right now. Packs $10+, booster boxes $700. I mean, huge price disparities. So even the Duraludon and stuff, there's a couple cards from Evolving Skies. It's what's your downside risk? Some of these Altarts when they're $6, $8, $10, it's if you're into a card for $10 and it goes down 50%, what happens? It's well, you got a cool Altart that's super hard to pull from a super fan favorite set in one of the most hyped periods of Pokemon in history, and you lost $5. It's not the end of the world. Now, the problem is I think if people are trying to bury into these cards and making huge positions, that might be tough, just the future liquidity of it. But if you're fine with nickel and dime in this hobby, those might be good plays. Why not? Screw it. At this point, we're back at it. We are 2020 timeline for Pokemon, in my opinion. Just looking at what everything is doing, it's just right now everything seems like a good buy. But this could be that period where I talk about all the time. We're in the bubble. You go up. You have a little retrace, and then you haven't really reached the top of the bubble. And I always say the top of the bubble is when your grandparents or your mom or your dad, they come up to you and they're like, you know what, Sonny, should I start to buy some Pokemon? You go, you know what, Mom? You know what, Dad? Yes. Now is the time for you to buy some Pokemon. Let's put some Pokemon away. So I think I've heard a lot of those stories lately too, so it really makes the bubble really... But who knows, maybe the bubble never pops. We've definitely seen micro bubbles in this hobby in the last couple of years. There will be a couple people out there who will say, nope, there's never been a bubble recently in Pokemon, and then I say, first edition Jungle Pikachus, first edition Jungle Eevees, Vivid Voltage $280 booster boxes, Darkness Ablaze, $123 ETBs. Oh, don't you worry. We definitely had some bubbles in this hobby, and those bubbles went, and they popped hard, especially when you're looking at some big chases. You heard me out there. Pikachu VMAX? I didn't forget about the Pikachu VMAX. That's a $1,000 plus card. It's not a $1,000 plus card anymore. Darkness Ablaze. If you were picking up some Darkness Ablaze 420 Charizards, guess what? You got smoked. Because that's what happened. There were some mini bubbles that happened in this hobby. For sure. And there's the haters out there will tell you that there's been no bubbles in modern Pokemon. But, oh, trust me. There's been bubbles. And there's been people saying, watch out for the bubbles. And, like, that's the thing. It's like, when all the people that said, oh, all these people hate modern Pokemon, you really got to go back and look at the timelines. People were saying they didn't trust modern Pokemon. You have to, like with me, I get strawmanned all the time because people will take out of context something I put on a video 3 years ago. Listen, when people were saying modern Pokemon was in a bubble, it was. I told you, Vivid Voltage booster box is at $280. There was people saying that was a bubble, and you know what people don't understand, there was other videos of other channels saying how that was a good investment at $280. And the sad truth and reality to that is, if Vivid Voltage never got reprinted, those people would probably be right. Vivid Voltage would probably never have crashed down like it did. And all the people that were saying, be careful, this stuff might be overvalued, those people could have looked really, really stupid. Like dumbasses. Because they would have said not to buy these sets when they all went up. But that's the thing. People will, quote what they said back then, and when everything was going absolutely parabolic and all these prices were unjustified, and then people will be like, these people hated modern, but now they've changed their tune. It's like, no. Nobody fucking changed their tune. It's just you got to put yourself in the moment. Like, that's the problem. But that's where we're at. So you got to be careful. You got to be careful when people are telling you their stories. They're only going to ever tell you the stories how they want to tell the stories, So Evan Williams said Lost Origins is already up to $208. The FOMO is starting to hit. Good. Good. Evan, if this... All right. I don't know why this just came to me. But I always say that Pokemon is a freight train going down the tracks, and it's not stopping for anybody. But I think I'm going to change that now, just because of Evan Williams' comment. I'm going to say that from now on, Pokemon is a steam-powered locomotive, and it's chugging down the track. And you know what is feeding that coal burner on that train? Is just somebody's there, and they're just scooping FOMO into that boiler, and that boiler is just getting hotter and hotter until it's just cherry red hot. And you know what's happening? That choo-choo train, chugga, choo-choo, it's just going down the tracks faster and faster and faster. And maybe we're headed to a cliff. Maybe the tracks end. Maybe they forgot to build the bridge in the far distance. I don't know. We're not there yet, but we are just chug-a-lugging. That's it. And the FOMO, that is the coal just being shoveled into the boiler. That's where we're at. So Nicholas said, PK, I'm hoping we get the other side of the other image of the Venusaur too. That would be dope. Yes, I definitely hope that happens. Let's see. Number 1 mod in the game. Drew, good to see you in the chat, buddy. Drew's dropping a link to my IG. If you guys aren't subscribed to my IG, check it out. I don't really post on there, but with that said, if you ever want to try to get a hold of me, IG is definitely your best bet. Don't try reaching out to me on Discord. Discord notifications silenced. So definitely try to reach out to me on IG if you're trying to get a hold of me. I think I have an email on the community post tab of this. Don't try emailing. I get so many spam. Oh my god, the spam emails you get when you have a YouTube channel is just preposterous. Yeah, talking to you, Drip. I get reached out to people all the time to break on different stuff, and it's just not gonna do Drip, not gonna do whatnot, not gonna do some random cryptocurrency scam thing, majig. Let's see. Giovanni Pikachu says, once I end this live, he goes, you're gonna miss it by a couple minutes again. Let's hope, Giovanni. Listen, maybe I could buy one more Brilliant Stars booster box tonight. You know what? Well, I already have empty ones. I think this is a problem with the shelf. Is there any room? I guess we could put maybe some booster boxes right there. I feel like I am going to have to put like a Brilliant Stars booster box up and Lost Origin booster box. Just kind of throw them in the background because the background is supposed to be like, kind of important things that happen in the hobby or like, interesting conversations. And how much breath I have wasted now talking about Brilliant Stars and Lost Origin is have to be a ridiculous amount. So maybe one of those will have to go back, or maybe by the Power Rangers we'll stick it in the background because we do have a little white wall right there. I think that might be the play. I definitely don't want to put it in a. Well, no, I lied. I was gonna say I don't want to put it in like an acrylic case, but let's hope the prices of these booster boxes go so high that it's worth it to put in an acrylic case. Oh boy, we have the man, the myth, the legend, ladies and gentlemen, is in the chat. Mr. Skater Nesto himself, Spicy Boys TV. If you guys like unfiltered, raw, just Pokemon chats, the Spicy Boys TV channel's a great channel. So if you type into my channel, just type in Skater Nesto. We did an interview together. Watch that interview. In the description of that video is the Spicy Boys YouTube channel. I definitely recommend you guys checking it out. It's a good one. Nesto's a good guy. I got to the point with MetaZoo. Basic said MetaZoo isn't dead yet. Oh, we'll see. So with the one pack of MetaZoo I did open, Basic said, release the tapes, PK. Show the world how much you enjoyed it. No, that will go. That's in the deep annals of my cell phone. That video may never see the light of day. Number one mod in the game said, number one guest, Basic Trainer live is overdue. Yeah, it's like I don't even know how many lives Basic Trainer's been on. So my channel's been around for like 4 years at this point, and Basics had multiple reoccurring guest spots on multiple lives. With Basic is probably the number one person that's been on this channel more than anybody else. So somebody, I don't even know what their name is. Somebody said crazy low value, but I don't even see a name. I just see like they're a channel member. Let's see. Son of a Merc says, don't we have a junk era already that was underprinted? EX era and then became gold. It's tough to say because if you're going to say like the original junk wax period was like when Pokemon was introduced, like base set, jungle fossil, there is a little bit of validity to that, I guess. But the problem is like, while there's validity to potentially, I mean, there's a lot of base set cards out there, but the values that a lot of those are selling at, it's just too many cards in a near mint condition you can still get a premium for, And what I mean by that is if you had some 1989 Don Russ set, right? If you just found some random, you opened up a pack, some random no-name Joe Smo, played 2 years of minor and 1 year in the major leagues for the Montreal Expos in 1989, and you went and graded that card and you got a PSA 10, you're not going to get any sort of premium to it whatsoever. When you say that literally about base set, there's 102 cards in base set. Think about that. 102 cards in base set. And you could grade every single one of those that is a true near mint contender and get a PSA 10, and you can sell that card for a premium, including energies. Yes, every card in between. So, from Alakazam to the end, and every card in between, you can sell that for a premium. And I'll give you an example. Talk about an energy from base set. Basic Trainer might not like to hear this, but there you go. You grade some double colorless energies from base set, unlimited, doesn't have to be anything special, doesn't have to be first edition, doesn't have to be shadowless, which again is like a weird thing to talk about because of the price difference between shadowless and first edition for a lot of what this would be considered bulk or the junk wax era. So it's hard to say because all 102 cards in near mint condition are valuable, where you can't really say that about the junk wax era of sports, where you can say that about the hits of the era, which I mentioned earlier in this video. When you talk about a Ken Griffey Jr. Upper Deck PSA 10, yeah, that's the hit. That's the chase. But random Joe Smo is not there. Where at least for Pokemon, there's value in every single card graded. And shout out to James from Z&G Emporium. If you're not following James's Instagram, recommend you guys checking it out, because a lot of the times James will post some of his big sales that happen. And one of his big sales that happened pretty recently, obviously, this isn't WotC timeline, but he showed just a random Heart Gold Soul Silver Umbreon in a PSA 10, relatively low pop card. Is it a relatively low pop card because a lot of people aren't grading it, or is it because Heart Gold Soul Silver timeline was relatively scarce and relative to everything around it? But that Umbreon, just a holo, we're not talking a prime, we're not talking a legend card, we're just talking about a Umbreon holo in PSA 10, sold for over $2,000. That is a card that not too long ago would have been considered maybe not bulk, because that was probably always like a $1, $2 card, but it was far from a $2,000 card. So this is the thing about this hobby too. The depth of this hobby is phenomenal. And when you look at a card like that Umbreon holo from Heart Gold Soul Silver, recently graded, and it's something I mentioned, and maybe we lose sight of it a little bit because the mass, plays are so obvious, but I still mean it when I've said it in the past, and I still mean it today. The riches are in the niches of this hobby. And I mean that. But now the thing is, look at that. The riches are in the niches. All you had to do was go source nice Umbreon holo from Heart Gold Soul Silver, and there you go. $2,000 later, the riches are in the niches. And the fact of the matter is, and the truth is, in this hobby, those plays are still there. Thank God that not everybody goes that far down the rabbit hole, because it would make those plays much harder, but they do exist. And that's why I always encourage people. I know. No, people don't want to hear this, but go back and start to learn about sets, start to learn about cards, start to really engage in this hobby, start to appreciate it for what it is, because it's a massive hobby. Pokemon, there's a lot of sets. Most people can't name every set. Most people can't name the hit of every set, but you can start to do that, and it doesn't take that long. And then once you do it, you'll start to, it just becomes second nature to you. And you could instantly start to recognize stuff. You could instantly start to comp stuff in your brain. And I know a lot of people, this is a thing too. You got to be careful. There's people out there telling you pop reports don't matter and stuff. I promise you, pop reports do matter. Whether people will tell you they don't fucking matter or not, they do matter. And if you start to understand pop reports, you start to understand what type of cards are hard to grade. The riches are in the niches for a lot of this stuff. So don't lose sight of that. But that's the thing. When I say the riches are in the niches, there's riches in other things too. This hobby, super, super forgiving. Super, super rewarding. It's a hobby that keeps on giving, baby. Let's see. Oh no, I jumped to the bottom. Why did that happen? So Johnny Bongo said, "Yo, D-Gens, what if Lost Origins gets restocked at Pokemon Center? It's not over yet. If it gets restocked, that would be interesting. I would be very interested to see how that plays out, because I almost wonder if Lost Origin got restocked at Pokemon. Now, restock is different than reprint. Okay? So when I say restock, I am not describing reprint. Now, I'll give you an example. So not too long ago, shout out to Garen M, my last case of Evolving Skies booster boxes was from a restock on PokemonCenter.com. It was not a reprint. It was just a restock. I just happened to be checking my phone. He shot me an Instagram message at 7 a.m. on a random Wednesday, and he was like, "Hey, PK, by the way, Evolving Skies booster boxes are restocked on PokemonCenter.com." At the time, I think booster boxes were selling for either $280, $300. So whatever timeline that was when that restock happened. And, instantly everybody bought it out, but they were up for about an hour-ish. So, but then that's it. Everybody ate up that supply real quick. And when you looked at the prices of booster boxes right after that restock, it didn't affect the market at all. I would be interested if we do see a Lost Origin restock, very similar to what we saw happen with Evolving Skies. Like, we have a point of reference we can look at. And that Evolving Skies restock didn't have anything, didn't had zero effect on the price of booster boxes, and I'll be curious in the future if we do see a restock of Lost Origin hit PokemonCenter.com, if we see any sort of like price reflection. Now, this is a caveat too. Are we going to get reprints of any of this stuff? No, I don't think so. Now, could we get a real quick restock, very similar to another point like Astral Radiance? Astral Radiance we saw go out of stock and then almost instantly was restocked on PokemonCenter.com, and then it was back up. We saw prices for Astral Radiance really fluctuate pretty crazy. But no, it'd be interesting. I think it would just a restock on Pokemon Center of any of these sets will really just be the timeline. Is it immediate restock, or is it, months down the line or years down the line? And if that happens, will we see any sort of like price reflection? Let's see. Oh, I like jumped up to the chat and then I don't even know. I'm all over the place. McNick said he picked up a skunk tank a couple months ago for $4. Yeah, I mean, that's it. You think about a skunk tank and you just think about like, it just shows this hobby. I mean, there's just some cards that are super, super cheap. But I mean, just looking at Brilliant Stars right now, I'm on TCG plan. I'm just looking at like the most expensive cards. You know what I can do? Let's see if I could pokey tube this. Let's just look at the hits right now. Let's see if I can make this work. So, oh, look at that. Boom, baby. Let's see. Try to make this just a little bit better. Look at that. I'm almost kind of a YouTuber. I try. But, hold on. Cropped it a little bit too much. But yeah, let's just look at some of the cards. I mean, obviously, don't really look at the load listing. I mean, it's hard. Market price could be manipulated too, but this kind of just gives you an example of like what the most expensive cards in the set are. But obviously, you're going to get your two big Chase Charizards. But looking at this Umbreon, like, look at this price chart. Here it was, just, here we go on January, and then it's just doing its thing, and then all of a sudden, boom. I mean, look what happened. The 1 month chart is ridiculous on some of these cards. Just a regular Umbreon V. It's like a almost identical chart. It's crazy. I mean, it just makes me. I'm looking at the prices of these singles. Let's see. I mean, still. I mean, they're all on the up trajectory, which makes me think that. Yeah, it's like every single card. The Sylveon VMAX, that's a good card. I did not know the Sylveon VMAX was $22. That's crazy. Sylveon V. Look at that. I don't know, guys. Now, this is a card that you could make the argument is a little undervalued. The Galarian Moltres. First of all, awesome artwork with that Moltres. Gold card. Super tough to pull. Price has kind of been trending down. Like, you can make the argument that this could be a buy. I would say definitely the Moltres. See, I love this card right here. This is a buy to me. The Mimikyu VMAX. Fan favorite Pokemon. Honchkrow Altart. It's kind of doing its thing, but like for being an Altart, still pretty cheap. I feel like the Acerola is super, super undervalued right now. Yeah, see, It's funny that the ones I think are undervalued are trending down a little bit. But I wouldn't. Oh, this is a. I like that art. This is a sick art. I don't know if I consider. Oh wow, it's interesting. Like we're only seeing some cards explode. The cards that I feel are undervalued are all having price decreases. Like the Cynthia's Ambition, full art trainer, waifu boys, where you at? Shout out to CTR. I don't know. There can still be plays in modern singles, man. I'm telling you. Pikachu V full art, tough to grade, but I mean, you could pick this up like a $7 card. Pick up 10 of them, you're in for what, $70? I mean, obviously, you know the Raichu is going to be undervalued. Vaporeon undervalued. I mean, tough to grade these. The Sharon's Care. Are you kidding me? This is a $4 card. That's wild. That's wild. Somehow cheap. The price disparity between the hits to everything else is wild. Wow, this is a 50 cent or a dollar card. Wow. I don't know. I don't know sometimes. But I'll go back to the chat. Let's see what you guys are saying about this. Um, Space Frog said, "Love the CTR chase for the yeah, the Conkeldurr V. I'm about to pick up these cheap." Yeah, he was. Pokemon Go is just such a shitty set, and the fact that that was his chase is pretty funny. Um, Nicholas said, "People will always tell you the gains they made and not losses they incurred. The creation of FOMO. It depends what channels you are watching, man. A lot of people talk about the losses. Uh, I don't think people just always talk about the gains, man. I think a lot of people talk about the losses." Um, oh no, jump to the bottom. I'll never understand. Uh, Sorry, guys. I don't know why this does it. Jumps to the bottom instantly. Uh, TCV Collectible said PK should have a promo code with some kickback on Pokemon Center. Listen, if I could get a PK promo code on TCG Play, I would love it. Listen, I know James is out there, Mr. James from ZNG Important. He's out there. He's tinkling away in his little Arizona Pokemon new mansion, whatever he's doing, spending all his Pokemon money. And I know he's listening right now. And James knows what I'm about to say. James, you know you're out there. You know I need a PK promo code for your damn ZNG auctions. So, James, you got my email. You got my phone number. Feel free. Shoot me a text. Shoot me an email. Just let me know whenever we can activate that PK promo code. And yeah, I would definitely like some promo codes. But some people are real sticklers with their promo codes. Looking at you, Mr. James. Yeah, I see you. I see you. James thought he could just, James is out there. He's listening to this. He's like, I'm just going to be able to make it through this whole PK rant and PK not bring up my name. But think again there, Mr. Jim. Son of a Merc says, I use junk loosely. It was just thinking of the first couple sets post Wizard of the Coast is when most of us left to chase our hormones and we left some of the best sets behind. EX era. Yeah. I mean, best sets are subjective, but yeah, there was, I don't know. I find myself in a weird position where I am nostalgic for the sets that I wasn't around for in Pokemon. And I don't know if I'm an outlier, but, I always talk about it all the time is one of my favorite sets of all time. And one of the sets that I'm trying to complete, a complete master set in either PSA 9 or 10, is Skyridge. And by the time Skyridge was released in, what was it, May of 2003, I was already out of Pokemon. I was already out of the hobby. I wasn't opening up packs. So it is funny that I am nostalgic for a set that I wasn't really part of. And same thing when you talk about some of the best sets left behind, like the EX timeline, especially, let's just say from, Ruby Sapphire all the way up to Power Keepers and every set in between. beautiful sets, especially introduction of gold stars and stuff. When you talk about, you know, Team Rocket Returns with the introduction of gold stars, and there's just so many good sets in the EX timeline. And I find myself all the time being very nostalgic for these sets. And again, using the word nostalgic for sets that I was not around for. It is a very interesting thing. And I that's that weird ability that Pokemon has that I don't think a lot of other maybe collectibles have. Now, I'm not really into a lot of other collectibles, but I always find it interesting that I find myself so nostalgic for sets that I wasn't even a part of. I mean, I was around for Base Set Jungle Fossil. So obviously those I'll always have a very special spot in my heart for sets like those. And nothing's going to ever take that away, but it's interesting. And then as I, moved out of like late WotC, moved out of the EX sets, and then I found myself being, super ingrained in a lot of Diamond and Pearl stuff. And then I found myself being super, super engaged in a lot of like a Heart Gold Soul Silver and Platinum timeline stuff. And then, when I got back into the hobby, there was still Black and White available, and I was not going after Black and White. But now I find myself very nostalgic for Black and White. Like, here's a set. Here's the Thundurus. You got the Tornadus and the Thundurus from Emergent Powers. Emergent Powers, there's a lot of sets. A lot of people like to shit on Emergent Powers. Might be, one of them, but there you go. Full Art Chase. Talk about cheap cards that are undervalued. Like, this is a great example of a card. But it's, there's a timeline. There's a set. Like, the fact that I could tell you that I'm nostalgic for Emergent Powers is ridiculous. I mean, that's a ridiculous sentence to think. To hear somebody on a live say, I am nostalgic for Emergent Powers. There's not many people out there willing to say that. So, Dad, Canny B Girl said, at PK, do you see the Garantina hitting $500 raw by the end of the year? I don't know. I don't follow to be honest with you, I don't follow the day-to-day of that card enough to see like how much of that card is being bought up every day. But, if I looked at that card for like a week or a month, I think I would have a better understanding. But I'm too busy at looking at the graded prices for a lot of these cards. So when you ask me the raw price question, it is struggling. Now, if that card does hit 500, see, I don't touch raw. All right, I don't know how to phrase this. I I try not to talk about like raw prices so much because the for me I'm pre-grading everything that's 10 or bust, right? When you talk about near mint prices, especially, pulling up TCG player and stuff, there's a huge caveat to that. And but if that card did start selling for 500, so 500 for a raw Garantina could be like PSA 8 quality. If you know a raw is selling for 500, that means you're going to have to probably have the PSA 10 copies selling strong at like 1200. And do I see that possible at the end of the year for the PSA 10 to be at 1200 for that card? And the answer is no, not by the end of the year. Now in the future, yeah, but I think that card will lag behind the Moonbrown, and I don't think we even see the Moonbrown hit like 1200 by the end of the year. Maybe we might see it creep up, but if anything, the Moonbrown's going to creep up to that $1,200 price point before the Garantina did. Let's see. Tough Trainer K said, surprised at PK, a modern sealed investor. If you think that, you've been listening to the wrong. If you think that I haven't been a sealed modern investor, you've been talking to the wrong people or listening to the wrong people. TCV Collectible said, Jim Carson lives free in PK's head. Sleepless nights thinking about that promo code. You know what? There's truth to that statement. I'm not going to run. I'm not going to hide. I'm just going to admit to you. That is a true statement. Let's see. So, Namp90 said, maybe your nostalgia comes from when you discover them once you came back into the hobby. There's probably some truth to that. I would definitely say that. And I think Namp's right, because a lot of my nostalgia when it comes back to some of these later sets was when I was picking up binders when I got back into the hobby real early on. I tell this story all the time, and I'm going to tell it again just because I really like to beat dead horses. There's a horse right over there. He's dead. I beat him to death, and then when I get bored, I beat that horse more. But with that said, I'm going to tell the story because I think it's very good for perspective. When I got back into this hobby, I was chasing after base set unlimited Raichus. I always wish I could tell the stories that I was chasing after first edition booster boxes and crazy stuff, and I wasn't. But with that said, when I did get back into the hobby, I was picking up a lot of like binder sets. And I've told the story as recently as like a couple lives ago where I picked up a binder for the binder itself, and I valued the cards inside at 0. There's some perspective for you. But with that said, when I was picking up binder collections when I first got back into the hobby, there was a lot of cards flipping through the binder. Example, Neo Genesis cards. Like, I have a... Do I have... Yes. I have a Neo Genesis. All right, I'm going to... This is a cool Neo Genesis card. It's a Pikachu, but it's a missing ink error card. But, like, here's an example. A Neo Genesis Pikachu. When I got back into the hobby, I saw this card in a binder, I'm sure, and I went, I have no clue what set that is. When was this set released? What set came before this? What set came after this? There was a period of time flipping through binders when I would see a card with a very big fan favorite Pokemon like a Pikachu, and it was the first time I ever saw this Neo Genesis card. And I can tell you with almost certainty that I could almost guarantee that I saw this Neo Genesis Pikachu, in around 2012 timeline, 2013 timeline. Years after this, years and years. This is a card that was released in 2000. We're talking, I didn't even know this card existed until potentially 12 to 13 years after it was released. So as I was going through those binders, yes, I definitely 100% have nostalgia for cards like that. So if you guys want to know what a missing ink error card is, so this is one of them for you. It almost looks like a sun-faded card. But if you see here, you can see a hard stop where the printer ran out of ink there, and then if you look here, you can see it's a very clear. This card almost looks sun faded, and you might be looking at it on the camera and being like, no, that's a sun faded card. No, this is an ink error where literally the ink ran out on the card right there. Hopefully you're able to see that. But so a little backstory to this card was Nick Old School Pokemon picked up a binder collection at the Charlotte Collecticon. It was a pretty decent binder collection, and I was flipping through the binder, and I get to this Pikachu, and it stopped me dead in the tracks as I was flipping through it. He didn't even notice it when he picked up the binder. So I ended up picking this card up from him, and with the sole intention of just sending it away, grading it. Missing ink error cards sell for crazy premiums. And so one of the ways you actually can tell too is, I don't have my magnifying glass. Oh, I do. So if you actually, one of the ways you can do it is if you get a really high powered magnifying glass. So this one right here this is a 60x mag. So if you put the card here, you could actually look at the rosé pattern of the card, and if you move it over where the color changes, you could actually see the change in the rosé pattern of the card because it is missing that print layer to it, or ink layer to it. You could actually see the actual difference because cards get printed different. That's why I don't know how much you guys know, but one of the things you can do is, a lot of people always ask me questions. It's like, PK, how do you identify fake cards? One of the best ways to identify fake cards is get yourself a high magnification, but you're going to look for a rosé pattern. But more importantly, when you're looking at the actual lettering, of the card, you do not want rosé pattern. So when you look at the name of the card, Pikachu, you want that card to be like a solid black lettering because that is a different print process on that card. So a lot of times when you see a fake card, those fake cards are all printed at the same time. So you'll look at the black lettering of that card and you will see an actual rosé pattern exist in that card. And that is a huge indicator that that is a fake card. So there's a lot of different ways to like tell fake cards. Another, I'm not going to do, one day maybe I'll make a how to spot a fake card. But like that is one of the things. So when you're looking at the rosé pattern of the actual inking under high magnification. But no, this is a cool little Pikachu card. But yeah, going back to my tangent, how it all started is, yeah, there was a time many years after the fact after that card was released where I discovered it for the first time. So to circle back to Namp's question 5 minutes after my rant, yeah, I am definitely nostalgic for that card. And one of the reasons I am nostalgic for it is because I got to discover that card at some point in the last, call it in the last decade, let's see. Um, so Film Flam says, I almost did that this weekend, dude. Had a cool vintage binder with the big three on the cover, but all the cards were unlimited base, and he thinks they're worth at least $5 each for them. Yeah, no thanks. Yep. But, yeah, guys. Wait. Yeah. We made it to the bottom of the chat. Something I very rarely do, but I still managed to rant for about an hour on a random Monday. Yay. Listen, guys, I don't ask for much. The only thing I ever ask for is you could just do me one favor, just hit that like button. It really helps out the channel a lot. I don't ask for much, though I might ask if you guys want to do a Kickstarter MetaZoo booster box break just for the memes. I think we're going to do it. So I'll let you know if we do decide to do it, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And I don't know. It'll be something different for the channel, something I've never done before. And I will give us a reason to bring Basic Trainer on for chat too. But yeah, guys, do me a favor, hit that like button. If you're new to this channel and you've somehow made it to the end of an hour and 6 minute long video and you like this type of content, definitely recommend you hitting that subscribe button. Other than that, guys, appreciate every single one of you. And as always, I'll catch you on the next video.